Hello there, this is James S. Crofty, 1978, and one self-righteous, willfully ignorant, and grotesquely cynical non-position which has always deeply infuriated me is, well, there's no point in me or anyone else ever calling ourselves feminists, because feminism can mean literally anything. A non-position which I've always argued against in the past by pointing out to the inevitably atheist possessor of the concrete mind in question that drew this conclusion that, well, you could say exactly the same thing about atheism. However, thinking about this issue a while ago now, pondering the fact that these people apparently demand that feminism have a single fixed definition, goal, and what have you, before they accept it as a label with which they'll choose to describe themselves, I soon realised that no, if we did such a thing, then feminism would effectively be dead, merely another dogmatic absolute held by an ever-shrinking minority of ideologues who chant the mantra and refuse to tolerate dissent, whereas at the moment, both academically at the top level as well as day-to-day at the grassroots, feminism is active, dynamic, and engaged, always coming across new issues, new perspectives, and new demands, discussing, debating, and theorising about them, and either forming a consensus or splitting, alas, usually leaving one group of ever-shrinking ideologues who chant their mantra and refuse to tolerate dissent. For example, all sex work is exploitation and or rape, and there is more to being a woman than cutting off your dick and wearing a dress. From sex-positive feminism and the adoption of sex workers' rights to the adoption of trans and gender non-binary rights and equality and the recognition of gender as a spectrum, dynamic, active and engaged feminism has left these dogmatic absolutes by the wayside precisely because they are absolutes which, like creationism or white nationalism, often pretend to seek debate in order to spread their agenda, using the bad faith accusation that we are denying free speech and imposing a leftist tyranny to guilt us into allowing them to spread their propaganda in the hopes of gaining new recruits, while in reality actively closing themselves off from all challenge or debate, especially internally, condemning any and all dissent from the absolute moral dogma as the secular equivalent of heresy worthy of excommunication, while on the other hand, from the recognition and adoption of men's issues to the recognition and adoption of intersectionality, the reason why feminism is always developing is firstly because so is society, and secondly because as we engage with more of the world and more voices join the feminist dynamic, the entire question of A, what is gender equality, equity and or justice, and B, how do we best achieve it, is always developing as well. A far cry from the reactionary, blinkered and concrete perception of feminism held by anti-feminists who demand that it exists solely to achieve what they declare to be equality, equity and or justice, i.e. the elimination of Islam, and beyond which point insist that it is either obsolete at best or female supremacy at worst. And speaking of anti-feminists, as well as all other anti-progressives in fact, including transphobes and anti-sex work activists who still describe themselves as feminists, have you noticed how they keep regurgitating the same endlessly debunked non-arguments, straw men, ad hominems and other logical fallacies ad nauseum, only ever concocting ever more libelous conspiracy theories to explain why organisations who claim to fight for equality, equity and or justice don't agree with them, and how everyone who not only disagrees with but actively contradicts their absolutist moral dogma, for example, by being women who choose to work in the sex industry or men who choose to describe themselves as feminists, must have been indoctrinated or brainwashed into believing the lies spread by these conspirators, #soyboy, precisely because their non-position is reactionary and regressive, the very opposite of being dynamic, active and engaged. Ironically enough, that is all the result of the same concrete-mindedness that causes others to reject the label of feminist on the grounds that it can mean anything, but taking this all the way back to the beginning and giving such concrete-minded people the single definition of feminist that they so desperately crave. A feminist is someone who is not only working towards gender equality, equity and or justice, but is always open to new perspectives about what equality, equity and or justice justice actually are and how best to achieve them, being willing to, quote, shut up and listen to the experiences of others and adopt them into their own belief systems and advocacy, and furthermore, if the experiences, needs, demands, and what have you of others don't fit the existing campaigns and goals, to work with them to help create better campaigns and goals. Before anyone attempts to play the hypocrisy card, though, by pointing out that I'm declaring who is and isn't a real feminist, ooh, you say that we have to tolerate everyone, but refuse to tolerate Nazis or other extremists, behold the concrete mind at work. On the contrary, first of all, I'm simply pointing out that either you're a part of the active, dynamic, and engaged debate, which is always seeking the best way to achieve equality, equity, and or justice for everyone, and thus always adapting your position, your behaviour, and your actions when faced with a reason to do so, or you're not. And that if you're not, then you're at least implying that your position is the absolute objective truth which everyone else must adopt, and I would argue that this is the opposite of achieving equality, equity, and or justice for everyone. But secondly, though, and far more importantly, as part of the active and dynamic feminist debate itself, this position which I'm putting forward in this video is equally open to discussion, to being reworked and adapted, or if it fails to stand up to scrutiny, to being abandoned altogether, because remember, my friends, only a cis ever deals in absolutes.
That is a joke. I get it. It is not funny, but I get it.